So Legally Clueless has teamed up with She Walks, which is an initiative by Johnnie Walker spotlighting and celebrating women doing incredible work that's impacting communities. And today we're at Siasa Place. We're going to meet the executive director, Nerima Wako, who's doing a commendable job in ensuring that the youth in Kenya are involved in matters political and matters governance. My name is Nerima Wako. I'm the executive director of Siasa Place. Siasa means politics, and so it's a youth civic tech organization. So we use technology to spread information about politics, governance, and educate mostly people below the age of 35 about the constitution and political processes. Growing up, I've always been interested in politics as a kid. And I think also it has to do with my family. Like, my mom grew up in a political family, and then my dad, best friend, his brother, was in politics for decades, like my uncle. So I always grew up in spaces where we discussed politics from a young age. So by the time I was 10, I was having national debates with my dad. And I remember one day my uncle looking at my dad like, "Your daughter is a little strange." She's here 10 years old discussing these things with us. So I would say, like, my parents saw it from way back. But I would say for me personally, it's now right after university. I was doing my internship in the US in DC, and I was working for a peace building NGO. And at that time, Burkina Faso, and also there was Burundi, there was Nkurunziza. He was working around extending his term limit. And so I remember doing a lot of work in understanding what are the youth doing there, what are they talking about, what are they interested in. And it made me wonder about Kenya and what's going on in Kenya and at home. So that's why I would say it sort of switched for me when now I started focusing on national politics in Kenya. And so after the internship, it was coming to an end, and I wasn't sure what next, because there weren't really any openings in the DC office, but there were rumors that they were going to open an office in Kenya. And so they were like, "Hey, would you be interested in potentially helping us put up structures in Kenya?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So they're like, "It's not soon. We don't know, maybe a few months. But if it happens, we'll reach out to you." So I ended up moving back. My parents really worried about my life. Me, really optimistic, because now I was like, let me see what people are doing. So I would invite myself to governance meetings. Yeah. So, Hilton used to be there. People would be meeting in town. You're seeing, those flyers at the entrance, or there's a so-and-so meeting for governance. Some of them I just used to invite myself. And I just go in that room, and I meet people who are discussing now things. I'm like, yeah, this is interesting to me. So that's how I started to know the organizations that exist, the people who work there. And that's now when I bumped into people like Murabwa Odari. It was literally at a conference center on Wayaki Way. Yeah. And, he pulled me aside. He was like, "Interesting perspectives." So odd. You'd find young people in their 20s over there drinking tea, and we're really discussing governance. I was like, wow, I found my tribe, man. And so it was through conversations with Murabwa. He was like, "You know what? I've thought about starting a hub where young people can discuss politics, especially online." Then Twitter was just coming into the fore. It was like a new space. People were joining it. It's like, what if we could have conversations like on Twitter? And that's how it was sort of born. We used to now meet every Saturday, and it grew. We met people at conferences, just how they would answer questions. We would go and talk to them after. And before we knew it, we were 7. And before we knew it, we were having weekly forums. Before we knew it, we had a network. So we literally started online before now it evolved into NGO. So it's bad enough that I'm 5 feet. It's even worse when people meet me. So now, me in my 30s, imagine then, I'm in my 20s. People are like, "What is this high school girl doing here? Why are you not in school?" Like, It was worse. And I remember going for a meeting with Nairobi County. There was something we were planning. We were planning a cleanup in Mathare. And I wore a t-shirt and jeans to a very serious meeting. And, there were these commissioners and executive officers in suits, whatever. And so I come in my t-shirt and jeans. They're like, she's the one managing this event. Like, is she for real? And I remember a lot of times, yes, being the only woman. And so even in politics, it's worse. It's worse. And I would say just that sense of people taking you seriously. I did. I'm not going to say I had to create a brand where I had to be intentional about my communication and also the message that I'm passing across, which for me was, you can be of sound mind and young, but not necessarily have to look like a politician, because there's this image that's expected where you're supposed to be grand. I'm supposed to be in like heels. I'm supposed to be in vitenge. Like, there's an image that especially women in politics are supposed to have. And I was like, no. I want the people that I'm targeting are people who are normally outside the political conversation, and just to invite them in and to know that people like you should be in the political conversation. So it was intentional for me to have a particular branding, and it stuck. And I would say imposter syndrome is real. When I started doing TV interviews, the first interview I ever did on TV, I called my mom panicking, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm being called on TV. And my mom was like, but this is what you've been working toward. Like, don't you want people to know what you're working on, And I remember feeling sick, like sick to my stomach, to where I even called Shefa Okore, and we're praying on the phone and speaking the blood of Jesus, to go in before us, and to give us wisdom. Because I'm just like, Lord, is it really me? So I remember that first interview, I couldn't eat. I literally went to the bathroom and I was throwing up. I was just sick. And I was so close to cancelling. And then my hair was actually dyed orange. Right now, I'm mellow with this hair. It's either red, screaming, or orange. Like, I'm normally like in your face. So it was orange. And I remember, at least that day, I tried to wear an official dress. And I remember walking into the studio. It's a political show. And there were professors, 2 of them, who teach political science at some of the largest institutions in Kenya. And so when I walk in, they look at me like, one of them says, young lady, are you sure you're in the right place? We're about to enter a political show, And I just felt like, someone had just slapped me. And, I sat back and I didn't have a response, I just sat there in this reception lounge as we were waiting to be called on air and thinking, am I in the right place? Like, what am I doing here? This man probably doesn't even remember he told me that, but that sentence has stuck with me. And, we're being called to go on air. And I remember thinking, oh my God, am I even ready? Do I know what I'm doing? And I remember like when we went on set and I just saw all these cameras and lights. And so even when we went on air, I just remember taking a huge, deep breath, just being like, you know what you're doing. You know why you're here. You're supposed to be here. It's important that you are here, And then, just from that moment, I just spoke whatever came to my mind, whatever came to my heart. And, the rest is history. Before I knew it, I started to get a hold of this thing. But I still get nervous before going on air. It doesn't go anywhere, even though it's 10 years later. We're also talking about a country that has a very high population of young people. We've seen the rate of unemployment also remain very high for a number of years. So when we have President Ruto instructing KRA to come up with 600 billion by the end of the financial year, a lot of Kenyans, we would be fine with being able to give that resource to KRA if we could see where the resources were going. There are so many experiences of violence, especially during election periods. In 2022, I can give many examples of where you think you're safe and then all of a sudden, things happen. You're like, oh my God, because what happens when you're moving around with politicians for events, because campaign periods, you end up at many events with politicians who are vying. And before you know it, it turns violent because one politician has sent their goons or their gangs to come and disrupt the meeting. And so you have to know when to back. Like, you have to know when to run, You can't be zubaing, like you can't be absent-minded, because you will just see like something happening over there, and if you're not moving fast, you will not make it with the entourage out to leave. And let me tell you, those guys don't care. Like, they get into cars and they're out. And so there are so many situations where I've talked to women who have seen people dying, in front of their face, just because of that scuffle. And it's from stabbings to someone breaking an arm to an actual car going over somebody's body. Yeah, people have died. And for you to be in that space to see those things, there's a lot of trauma. And a lot of women, I know, by the time they're doing campaigns, they cannot just wear dresses. They will wear trousers. There are ways that they dress like combat. Even you see this kind of jacket, this is such a political jacket. Yeah, because of the pockets, and you have money in different pockets, because if you lose your people, you have to know how to get on a bike to get to wherever you're going. Yeah, that's why we wear these jackets. And so you'll find a lot of women wearing even bikers inside their skirts, inside their dresses, just in case things just go left. So that, for me, just shows you what, politics can do, and the level of violence that politics can get to, and just how you self-protect. You don't even realize how it's making you numb to things that normally should make you, you're just like, oh, that. Me, I have seen a bullet, like just to go, pew. It's crazy. Basically, starting Siasa Place, first of all, just the name Siasa. Man, people are like, is that a party? What is that? Why Siasa? And I would literally get like hefty laughs when you say Siasa Place. They're like, huh? Siasa Place? What a funny name, in the beginning. And also when you're telling people it's this space for youth to discuss politics and engage in, I would get a lot of, that doesn't make sense. And especially when you're talking about a space that was also heavily virtual, Right now, people are like, yeah, makes a lot of sense. But 10 years ago, people are like, nah, why would you care about conversations online linked to governance? So I'd say there was not much buy-in. There were very few people who could see where we were driving. And there were very few people who, it's those few people's endorsements that helped open small doors for me. Yeah, me going and talking to people about it was not gonna do much. Like, it really helped that I entered some of these rooms that were governance democracy rooms and meeting some well-known established people there. And these people just saying, I'm going to say a good word for you. That good word went a mile for a 24-year-old, And so that helped also building in our reputation. And the other thing that opened the door, that started to build our credibility, was the media appearances. So when I started doing TV, when we started writing articles in the newspaper, we also emphasized on writing every Sunday in the Nation. And I remember having conversations with editors like, Michael O'War, and insisting how they need to be young women in their opinions. And insisting how their opinion is important also when it comes to politics. And, him being supportive. And so building that sort of footprint helped Siasa Place become more believable. But the first time we had our convening, about 15 people came. 15. And half of them were my family. Half my mom, my dad, my brothers. I have a very supportive family. They're so sweet. And so they're just sitting over there. They look like it's not the target. And then the real youth were 7 other people who I had met. And so it was interesting because I remember finishing that meeting and wondering, is this gonna go anywhere? Like, this is such a small group of people. And I actually cried. I remember crying to my younger brother. I'm like, am I just having conversations with people? That's not gonna lead to anything. Like, I cried. And my sweet brother, like he really encouraged me, and he was like, no, keep doing it. You know those speeches of, it's not that the yes is not coming, you're just asking the right question to the wrong person. Keep at it, you know those ones. Yeah. So I would start this routine of, waking up at 5 a.m. I'd use like the time, 24 hours. Seriously use it. You're up early, you're sleeping late, just building this dream, and give myself a time of 3 years. If I give my all in 3 years and I don't see any progress, I'll let it go. And so honestly, at the end of 3 years is when we were receiving our first grant. Yeah. And from then, once we received our first grant, other donors started to now believe in our capacity, and we grew from there. So yeah, no, a lot of people are just like, what is this chick doing with her small club of friends? They didn't take us seriously, but now, yeah, we're a serious entity. Yeah.
But unajua sasa hiyo ni nini? Kila mtu alinyenyekea. Hata wenye wako na mdomo.
Out of the 10 years we've been in existence, I've seen young people that we started off with enter county assembly. Yeah, like we even have Eric Bett. He's now a whip, majority whip in the county assembly of Kericho, starting off as a watchman. Actually, his nickname is Watchman. He's been one of our adamant key champions. He's one of those people who you can call to Nairobi for a strategy meeting and he will come and he will be there focused. And he's also said a few times that I see how the engagement with the community and my work has helped me, even through some of the meetings we've had, and even supporting certain bills we've pushed through the county assembly. There's a youth bill now in Kericho that Ken is our program manager. He's been pushing for years. Then I remember when he had it been published, there were like tears in his eyes, because it's been something that he's been doing for over 3 years. Yeah, so change can be quite slow. And even we have many petitions. We've done a lot of public litigation. You guys remember even some of the issues that we pushed forward with the finance bill itself. There were like 60 respondents on it, led by Okiam Tata. We were respondent number 20, So there are things that we've done that will go in history. Even rejected some appointments that presidents have made, including Uhuru Kenyatta, and being quoted in Kenya law, that has happened. Or even being involved in institutional processes and change. So being able to have partnerships with like the National Youth Council, being able to support and collaborate, or People's Dialogue Festival, for the last 3 years maybe, we've been supporting the Youth Village and coordinating with the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. There are so many things. I feel one of the largest is just seeing youth organizations that we started off with branching out and being their own voices. We've supported over 10 youth organizations, and now they're working in their counties and they're being recognized by the assembly. So for us, that's the big thing, because a lot of people didn't believe in us when we started. We have a true passion in believing in young people. And sometimes I get so mad at Ken because we believe in people and then they let us down. And he look at me like, at least we gave them a chance. And I'm just looking at him like, oh my God, how am I going to explain this? And he's normally like, no, we have to take a risk. We have to take a risk. So we normally support people who are seen as underdogs. That for me is a huge achievement because no one believed in us. And so we are huge on supporting. And even as recently as yesterday, the Data Labelers Association was launched. And it just gives me so much joy, to be one of the institutions that said, we will work with you. And now they've formed their own association as AI digital workers. So for me, it's things like that, seeing people existing and growing and evolving. And we had a hand in it, yeah. A lot of times, there's so much noise and a lot of noise about who we are. And so if I never got to that place of solitude, of who am I really, and asking myself that, and building my own foundations, I think there's a lot of low self-esteem, and it's not your fault. Sometimes also it's just the way you're raised or the kind of family, your upbringing. There's a lot of baggage that comes around us, and I feel, especially as women, we tend to carry it with us. And it would be the intentionality of choosing to shed it off. Because, there's this thing I'll tell my close friends all the time. Before I make a decision, before it actually became who I wanted to be, I would be like, I'm gonna act like a man. And they would ask me, why are you saying act like a man, act like a man? Because a lot of times, and I joke with this with my friends who are CEOs, who are women, and we call each other like, oh my God, can you believe someone said this? So you're having that community of people who have the same mind frame as you is so important, because it also helps build that confidence within you. So you really need to evaluate who's around you, and are they building toward what you want to build for yourself? And the reason why I say act like a man is because sometimes I'll find myself in rooms where I would think, what would a man do? What would a man do? And not to behave the same way as a man, but to find your way to getting that result of what a man would do. Because sometimes you'd find yourself in these rooms and you'd say the same thing, but because you're a woman, it's like, she's so arrogant, she's so rude, but the conclusion is the same. Yeah, and so even the way people perceive you is completely different. So recognizing that. So believe in yourself and your capacity is so key. And also, I feel like being in tune with my spirit has helped me a lot. So I have a very strong spiritual foundation. I wouldn't say that I'm religious, but I definitely have my own relationship with Christ. So for me, meditation is important. Finding that grounding every day is important, so that you continue to build your purpose is important. Because if you're constantly swayed by the wind and the noise, you won't be able to go anywhere. And in that quiet moment, you will know what your purpose and passion is, and just finding your way. And I believe it's Steve Jobs who said, sometimes it's not about knowing the steps forward. Sometimes you just take steps, and then looking backwards, you realize, oh my gosh, they're connected. And that's okay. Sometimes if I told you 10 years ago, this is where Siasa Place is gonna be, I would be lying. I did not. I just knew I needed to start this thing. I just had a passion for it. And then I just did the steps as we went. And so now, to say that we work in 17 counties is unreal to me. To say that I have a team of 21 people. To say that you can handle budgets of $1 million. So it's just one of those things where I'm like, whoa. But you keep sharpening your capacity, like, I can handle this. Yeah, so it's not to say that all of us know what we're doing. We just sharpen our capacity daily, and to ground yourself daily is what I would say. Yeah.